If it makes you money or brings us happiness, you'll find it right here. This is The Purple Tie Show. Welcome to this episode of Purple Tie Guys. I'm Robert Martin.
I'm Blake Singleton.
Today we're going to be talking about the redundancy department.
Of redundancy.
Yes, we're going to talk about the podcast about podcast.
Yeah.
I like that for a title for the show. A podcast about podcast.
I'm gonna make this just like we pick on Jacob about his meetings about meetings and emails about emails. So this is podcasts about podcasts.
This is podcast about podcasts. So we've talked about content creation on numerous occasions.
We've even talked about podcasts a little bit.
A little bit. Well, we touched on it. We were like, hey, it's a great way to do,
I would argue, and I think I did on a previous episode, that this is easier to do.
You're always arguing.
True. But my point was, it's easier to make a podcast as content than it is to do anything else, including writing articles.
Oh, it's a hell of a lot easier than literally anything else you're going to do, right? Because... and you don't have to have special equipment. Now, we have an iPad Pro.
Yep.
And GarageBand, which is, which is free, but someone will send us an email and be like, I don't know where you got your iPad Pro for free, but they're not for so. The iPad Pro was not free. However, GarageBand is free.
Yeah, GarageBand comes with every iOS and iPad OS device.
Oh yeah. And here's the thing, we're on like a $14 pair of like microphones from the Amazon, and they sound fine. I think they sound fine. If you don't think they sound fine, then what are you listening to?
A little background. At one point, we had a studio set up for the podcast. Whenever we were syndicated on radio,
the podcast miserable.
It was not fun. But we were being syndicated on the radio up in Tennessee.
Correct.
And we had to have studio quality, like high-end sound.
Microphones. And, we were on the radio in Memphis for a little while. But,
a little while. We were on the air for 3 years.
Was it 3 years? Wow.
Yeah.
How time flies. But it would be just like if, a doctor or a lawyer got a, talk show on a local radio station. It was kind of the same deal.
We had a couple of doctors that we used to work for that were on television all the time.
Yep.
And radio, they would bring them on for interviews and stuff like that.
They had like a nighttime show.
Yeah.
So when you talk about content, and see, that would be great content.
Yeah.
Right? So you're like, hey, I'm going to do, like the local news had Law Line.
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, hey, I'll tell you what, I'm going to do Law Line. It's great marketing for me. But if I could have the clip, the video, it would also be great content for a website or a blog or YouTube or, any number of things really. And we had, really expensive $200 and $300 microphones and, a Scarlett, 2i2 that turned, the microphones into a USB connection in the back of the computer. But it made it so much work because it was like, okay, let's, show up at noon on a Sunday and we're going to record a podcast.
And then it's going to take, 40 minutes to edit. And then you got to take the time to upload it to wherever it's going to be hosted, whether that be someplace for free that's going to put ads around it or someplace where you're paying to...
Now here's the thing. We're trying to make this sound like a thing you want to do, not discourage them. So there's a lot of great options out there.
So the long and short of it was... Whenever you've got a dedicated spot to do your podcast that requires you to sit in a specific place every time to do your podcast, I'm sure some people love it, but it was awful.
It was.
Because the setup just was not comfortable. And these podcasts had to be at least an hour because it was an hour-long radio show.
Well, and you would make, we would make, an hour and 10-minute show and then chop it down and make it fit in, an hour exactly. And that's the other thing with the radio show, because it was syndicated on the radio and it was an hour long exactly. Trying to talk about topics like this and that were interesting to us, you would either be way short, and so you would have to babble your way through the last 30 minutes.
Or you would be really excited about it
and have
you
to
would
cut it off early.
Over. Yeah. You would. You'd have to cut it off early because you would just get into it and
be like, well, we'll continue this on next week's episode of Purple Tiger. And then by next week, you've forgotten it.
Yep.
And you're not going to sit there and just continue bantering about it.
No, because the great thing about having two people, if you can have a second person or even a third on your podcast, it makes it a lot easier to talk to each other about the topic. Because the first couple of episodes of the original Purple Tie show were awful because it was just Robert sitting down in front of a microphone.
I hated it. They were like, but you're so brilliant. I'm like, I sound like a dumb backwoods redneck, and I mean no disrespect with that. And I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable. And then I was like, dude, you got to come do this thing with me, or I'm going to end up putting my fist through the screen one day.
That's how I ended up on the
co-host
podcast as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, you have to do this thing with me. But you can do it over the phone. Like you can both, dial into like a Zoom meeting or whatever.
Well, let's get into that. Let's get into actually deciding what to do next. So you've decided you want a podcast.
I'm going to podcast. Blake, I'm going to start a podcast. Tell me how to do it.
Okay. You've got some things that you need to go through first before you can start your podcast. 1, figure out your niche and your topic.
Okay.
For us, our niche and topic is healthcare, usually.
Healthcare, typically. Or the healthcare / small business.
Yeah. And then marketing or internets.
Well, it's not even really about marketing. It's about, it is about marketing because we talk about websites and creating content. Like this podcast is all about content. It's all about how to build a successful business that communicates how freaking amazing your business is. Mm-hmm. And that's the best thing. That's the best way I can think to describe what the hell a podcast is. It's something that lets you communicate how amazing your dental practice, medical practice, surgical practice, small business. You could there is literally a blog on the internet, and I'm using this in my presentation later in a month now. Mm-hmm. There's a blog on the internet that makes $54,000 a year talking about peanut butter.
Right.
We could literally start a podcast about cupcakes.
I would listen to a podcast about cupcakes.
Calorie free, baby.
So, second step, you've decided what your niche and topic are going to be. Next thing is the all-important title. You need to title your podcast.
Ours is kind of, Purple Tie Guys.
Yeah.
It's the Purple Tie Guys show.
It's Purple Tie Guys podcast. Yeah, it's not real, what would you call it? Inventive?
Yeah. Creative.
At the time, we were talking about so much stuff, though, that trying to title it was just going to be
miserable. Because we talked about in the beginning, before we decided to really focus on, helping business owners, doctors, market themselves. We would talk about the latest iPhone that came out or the latest iPad. And I really enjoyed that. I did. I enjoyed talking about the tech stuff. But dear God, everyone beats it to death.
It's true. Yeah, that's true. But title your podcast something interesting so people will listen to it.
Yeah.
So it catches the eye. Along the same lines, you don't need, but you should get some artwork. Some good artwork.
We have some amazing artwork that you just created earlier.
I did.
Here in the last little bit, and I just scratched my shirt, and I'm sure that picked up in the microphone. But I had an itchy. But so title your podcast something clever, like the One-Eyed Surgeon, or because that sounds awful. The Scratchy Shirt Podcast, or just think of a title that's catchy.
Yeah.
Something
or just something that's memorable.
When you're going through the iTunes store, I want something that stands out.
Yeah.
One of the podcasts I listen to is called the Duct Tape Marketing Podcast.
The only reason you listen to that thing is it had duct tape in the name. You know it.
Yeah.
You know that's
if
true.
duct tape can't fix it, it can't be fixed.
So, on that note, moving on to the next section. You need to find a place to host your podcast.
Equipment. We need equipment.
Oh, that's true. That's true. You do need equipment.
Equipment can be anything.
Get something to record the podcast.
Yeah, before you go, I'm going to lay the groundwork and then not have any way to do it. But the good thing is, if you've got a smartphone, you've got a podcast recorder. Mm-hmm. If you've got a dictation machine,
yes,
you've got a podcast recorder.
Yep.
So worry less about how the equipment and just focus on, I guess, knowing that you can make it. Because I've seen guys that record their podcast on a little $59 Sony Pocket, recorder that you use in a meeting.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound great, but at least they're doing it.
Yeah.
Right? Done is better than perfect. And I've said that for years and years and years.
I will say this. If you can afford to get better equipment, I would suggest getting better equipment. But honestly, cell phones these days, specifically, top of the line or even mid-grade Android devices or pretty much any iPhone, have great recording
and if you get an iPhone with, say, 256 gigabytes of storage, you've got plenty of storage. You've got GarageBand. You literally, you could buy these mics and just plug it into the bottom of the phone and just chit-chat away.
Yeah.
You've got many, many options for audio recordings as far as over the internet. You've got Zoom. Zoom.us, they do video and audio. So you technically could do a video podcast.
Yes.
And post that thing to YouTube, pull the audio out of it.
And then use that as a separate podcast.
So don't get hung up on a bunch of equipment.
You don't need
think
it.
You need a bunch of, high-end. Hey, if you want to buy a Rode, R-O-D-E, Rode Podcaster for, $300 off Amazon, and plug it into your computer so that you sound like, a bajillion dollars, far be it from me to try to talk you out of that, because I am
the Rode Podcaster is a fantastic microphone. Oh, it's a beautiful
microphone. I have one on my desk that I do a lot of voiceover stuff with.
Yeah.
And then Audacity is a free piece of software that you can use. So, but that gets into the software side of things, which you were going to head into you need a place to host it.
Yeah.
But there's tons of places to host it, free and paid.
There are free and paid options. So like he said, the next thing you need is some recording software or a device to record with, and then hosting. A couple of years back, a company came onto the scene called Anchor.fm.
I remember.
And they offer free podcast hosting. They also have a free podcast software that you can use on your phone.
Okay.
It automatically, you sign into your Anchor account. It automatically uploads it to your Anchor podcast account once you're finished recording on the device, like a cell phone or an iPad or whatever.
Okay.
And it's free, completely free, 100% free. They're ad supported, so all of your free podcasts will show up with ads at the front and the back that are not skippable. Mm-hmm. But if you're looking strictly to just get started, that is the easiest option to do that. Beyond that,
and you can have people call in.
you can, yes.
So that's a big plus.
If they have the Anchor, I think they can either use the Anchor app or straight up just call your special phone number to dial in and talk.
Well, I'm saying if we have somebody as a guest, we use Zoom.
Right. I was getting to Zoom. Zoom is the conferencing software that we use on a regular basis, but we also use it as a podcasting tool because it allows you to record the meeting. And usually we'll strip out the video because there's nothing interesting in the video, just a bunch of dudes sitting in front of cameras talking to each other.
I think I'm pretty interesting.
But anyway, we take the audio and convert that into a podcast.
Thanks, Blake.
You're welcome. Beyond that, you'll need a place to host it. The free stuff on there, like I said, Anchor's free. YouTube is a great place to upload audio content. You need to convert your audio into a video, which is pretty easy. I'm sure there's a piece of software out there that you can straight up just say, hey, make a video out of this image and this audio, and it'll generate a video for you.
You could literally get like a 15-second clip of a beach scene that looped.
Yeah.
And boom, you've got your video. You don't have to be. So for the people that's like, I don't want to be on camera.
Yeah.
Because I'm that way. I'm like, dude, I got a face for radio. that is my, so I don't want to be on camera. I'm just not comfortable on camera.
Getting into that, though, requires some video editing software, which there's plenty of free stuff like that out there. If you've got a Mac, you've got iMovie. If you've got Windows, they've got a ton of stuff that's free.
I got to tell you, I use a Mac on a daily basis, and I love my iMovie.
I know.
I love it. You drag a clip in, you chop the ends off, you put the stuff on, you hit a little share button, you tell it where you want it to go, and
please stop. It's all I hear day in and day out.
I can't help it that you're on an inferior platform.
Well, I use the Premiere Pro for all of my videos.
I was talking about Windows.
Oh.
You're welcome.
Anyway, so yeah, you get into the editing software for videos if you do stuff like, the 15-second clip and then you put the audio behind it. Not difficult. It's just you're going to have to learn a little bit. There's a little bit of a learning curve.
Where if you do just strictly an audio podcast, the learning curve is so much less.
It's almost. Oh, that reminds me. Anchor also allows you a intro and outro. Like you record an intro, you record an outro, and it automatically puts that into place for you.
That's nice.
So it cuts out the editing portion of that you would have with other places.
That's nice, because even on the iPad that we're using now, we'll stop about halfway through, save that out as section 1 or part 1, and then we'll record the other half. I went teenage boy there for just a second.
Why don't we take this opportunity to
thank a sponsor.
Thank a sponsor, and then we'll come right back.
Does your practice suffer from weak patient flow? Purple Tie Guys may be right for you. Purple Tie Guys is the most effective way to fill your waiting room with new patients. Clients usually see significant improvement in as little as 30 days.
Since I began working with Purple Tie Guys, my stream of new patients has never been stronger, and my waiting room is packed.
Side effects may include swelling of the waiting room, increased happiness, and a better bottom line. Serious, less common side effects include sports cars and Swiss bank accounts. If you experience patient flow that lasts more than 8 hours, hire additional staff and tell your marketing advisor immediately. Increase your patient flow with Purple Tie Guys. No contracts, just results. Well, now that I've had a sip of water, maybe I won't sound like a 15-year-old boy. Squeaky voice. The only thing really left to talk about is storage and hosting, right?
Well, there's that.
We talked about equipment.
There's that and one more thing. So, hosting.
Yeah.
Like I said, Anchor's free.
Okay.
But the paid options give you other things that'll lead into the last thing. Libsyn, Podbean, Blueberry. There's tons more.
Blueberry. Aren't we on Blueberry? I got an email from them.
We were on Podbean.
We
were on Libsyn. We're currently on Podbean.
Yeah. Libsyn was good. Podbean is pretty good.
Yeah. Depending on what you want, they offer different things. Libsyn, my main problem with Libsyn is that they are limited in the amount of data that you can upload per month.
Yeah.
You can store as much as you want with them, but you can only upload based on how much you pay, a specific amount a month. And the same is true with most all of the hosting platforms. You pay for 500 megabytes a month.
Now, Libsyn will give you great statistics like analytics,
Yes.
how popular it is, how many downloads you've had, where the downloads are from, by state, by country, it will give you very, very granular control over stuff like that. I'm not the back end kind of guy. Like I'm not. You handle all that.
But
right?
you really liked having those statistics.
Oh, I loved having the analytics and statistics.
And Podbean doesn't offer that. I don't remember why we ended up going with Podbean. Probably because it would let us upload a little bit more for a little bit less a month. It was something weird like that.
Well, the other thing is it allowed us to auto push to a bunch of places.
Yeah. That's going to lead into the next step.
You're going to talk about syndication.
I am going to talk about syndication. Right after I finish talking about hosting. The other things that a lot of the podcast hosts will give you is a website specifically for your podcast. It will list all of your episodes. It'll allow for commenting and sharing, and it's free. So you don't get a lot of control over how it looks. Mm-hmm. I say free, you're paying for the hosting, but I mean, it's an add-on. It's not something that they're focusing on. If you want a website specifically for your podcast, build one.
Yeah.
Build one somewhere else, because there are ways to get that podcast on that website without having to actually store the audio files on the server.
Yeah, but I'm more of I love the way we do it. Where
that's how I would suggest everyone does it.
The podcast is stored on, God, I want to call it Jelly Bean so bad, but it's not.
It's just Podbean. Just Podbean.
So it's hosted there, but then we push it from there to our website, from our website to like Facebook, LinkedIn, all these different places. And then they syndicate it, which we're going to get into, to all kinds of places.
Yeah.
So when you get ready to, I am a 15-year-old boy still. When you get ready to start your podcast, look for the best value, the most storage, the least amount of money, but the most syndication as well.
Yeah, and make sure it's syndicating where you're doing a lot of your social media. So we always say that everything should go through your website. So you need to push it to your website regardless.
Your website should be your number one go-to marketing tool.
If you are using WordPress, typically there is an automation that is included with your host that'll automatically upload a new blog post.
And it's super easy.
It is. It is usually super easy. If you're using Facebook, make sure they share to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever.
Everywhere great podcasts are sold too.
Everywhere
like
great
Apple Podcast and Spotify.
Yes, that is some other stuff that you need to look out for. Spotify just last year, I guess, opened up and started allowing regular folks to put podcasts on
Us
there.
normies.
Well, we actually got in before they opened it up to everybody else. We went through the vetting process back in like 2017.
Man, that was rough too.
It took weeks. It was so long.
It was forever. Like this podcast is a clean podcaster, we would tell you exactly what we thought about the process.
It was awful. And you had to stay on top of it because if you didn't, they didn't care.
No, they don't care. They didn't care if you were on there or not.
But the other places that it will push to is like Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, like you said, and then you'll get an XML address that you can put in other places like SoundCloud and Stitcher, and there's gajillions of places to listen to podcasts and find podcasts.
So, and I know that can be like daunting and complicated and all that. So what our suggestion would be is start with one. We always say start with one. The most popular would be get Podbean going, push it to Apple iTunes.
It's going to automatically
website, Facebook.
I say that, and now I'm thinking back about actually setting it up. Setting it up with Google and Apple was fairly straightforward. Most of the places are just really straightforward. You just got to take the time to figure out where you want it. Apple and Google, for sure.
Yep, absolutely. If you get it on Spotify, get it on Spotify.
Should be really straightforward.
Dump it to your website. From the website, have the website push to... Can I say website one more time?
Try.
Have the website push it to, hey, I got it. Facebook, Instagram, or not Instagram,
Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn.
Oh, LinkedIn. That's the other big one. Especially if you're a doctor, like an orthopedic surgeon. You're doing, bones. Orthopedic bones?
Dude, I don't know.
I think so.
I work with dentists.
Ha!
And bariatric surgeons.
I work with surgeons and dentists. So, but so you have, I think orthopedic is your foot. So, but you've got push that to LinkedIn because you've got all your other network there, right?
Right.
You've got, I know, a bunch of chiropractors that'll post like X-rays of what they're doing. They're like an interesting case study, and I'm like, cool, whatever, but. This is something that people will actually pay attention to because what makes a podcast so freaking good for content is I can put this podcast on, I can put my headphones on, I can go work out, I can go mow the grass, I can go clean the house, I can go do something else. I don't have to be stuck in front of a computer looking at a screen or on my phone or tablet watching a YouTube video.
You just shove it in your pocket, put in your headphones, and go.
And go for the run, go for the walk, go for the bike, whatever. And it's a one piece of content that people can take with them on the go. And it's your piece of content. I think that's what's super duper important.
All right. So to recap, figure out what you want to talk about, get some stuff to record it on.
Find out what to call it.
Find out what to call it. Find a place to put it, and then push it out to everyone.
Find a way to distribute it.
Yes.
And like everything else we've ever done, if you run into a struggle, freaking hit us up. We're everywhere. You can find us online at Purple Tie Guys, nearly every platform out there.
Yep.
Our website, purpletieguys.com, and we'll be glad to help. So with that, I hope you enjoyed the podcast today, and we'll talk to you in the next one.
See you later.